Welcome, race fans, to Pump the Brakes, the one, the only, the Cadillac of Formula One podcast. I am your host, the Pit Lane Patriot. We have an absolutely jam-packed show for you today. We are going to go through everything that occurred at the Monaco Grand Prix, from Max not starting to Cadillac's crushingly disappointing ending. And then we will jump straight into the preview for the Barcelona Grand Prix. We got so much to talk about. Let's get right into it. The Monaco Grand Prix. We almost did it. We almost had our first point. Cadillac's first point ever was right there, and it got taken from us. But before we get into that, let's go over all the events that occurred at the Monaco Grand Prix as a whole. So Monaco, glamorous, it's historic, famous, it's beautiful, and at times it's completely ridiculous, as it was this year. So on the one hand, Monaco is a crown jewel. It's the kind of race that your friend who doesn't watch F1 has probably heard of, like the yachts, the casinos, the harbors, the celebrities. But on the other hand, Monaco is also a race where passing is almost impossible. As we talked about in the preview, we expected this race to not be very overtake heavy, if any overtakes, because Monaco is impossible to overtake. But this year was not just like a sleepy Monaco parade. It was a Monaco race where the chaos actually kept stacking. We had a winner who looked ice cold under pressure. We had multiple teams throwing away huge opportunities. We had penalties that completely changed the points. We had a track surface that literally became part of the story. And then we had our team Cadillac somehow, painfully and heartbreakingly, right on the edge of history. So let's start at the front. Kimi Antonelli won the Monaco Grand Prix. If you think I've been saying this guy's name a lot, it's because he's won like every race this season. And though we have already said Kimi Antonelli wins a few times this season, this one feels a little different, because winning at Monaco is not just about having the fastest car. It's about nerve, it's about qualifying, it's about not touching the wall, it's about managing restarts, it's about dealing with pressure from the names behind you, and Antonelli did all of it. He started from pole, he controlled the race, he survived the late safety car, he survived the red flag, he survived the standing restart when Lewis Hamilton was right next to him in a Ferrari, and after all of that, he brought it home in P1. That's not normal rookie behavior. That's not good young driver stuff. That's a superstar in the making, or superstar who's already arrived, to be honest. And look, we have to be careful with young drivers. F1 does love to overhype people. 1 minute someone's the future, next minute everyone's asking if they deserve a seat. Just look at Jack Doohan last year. But Antonelli is not just flashing pace anymore. He's collecting wins. He's building a championship lead. He's beating pressure. And at Monaco, of all places, he looked like a driver who is not just fast, but also very composed, which at his age is terrifying. Because pace can get you into Formula One, sure, but composure is what wins you a championship, and Antonelli is starting to look like he has both. And that brings us to Mercedes as a whole, right? Even though Mercedes did have a winner, this was not a perfect team weekend. Antonelli leaves Monaco looking like the clear center of gravity in this championship. But George Russell, rough weekend.
And it's heartbreak, it's fury, and it's the end of the road for George Russell.
So Russell had the speed to be in the conversation, but this race got away from him through penalties and confusion. And once again, George Russell was robbed of a race where he had it in the bag through no fault of his own. He had a pit lane speeding penalty. Sure, that may have been his fault. Then the penalty was not served properly, which was not his fault. It was a pit lane fault. Then he had a drive-through penalty, and suddenly instead of fighting to the front, he ends up outside of the points. That's not just a bad Monaco result. That's a narrative problem. The same thing is happening to George Russell every time Antonelli wins. Antonelli wins, George Russell suffers. So that begs the question, is Mercedes becoming Kimi's team already? It may sound unfair to George Russell, though, because he has been genuinely good, and I still have him in this championship. He's had pace. He's had races where things were outside of his control have hurt him. But Formula One's not always fair. The championship doesn't care that you had a good excuse. Points are points. And right now, Antonelli is stacking wins while Russell is watching opportunities disappear. That's a dangerous place to be mentally, because Monaco's not just about the race result. Monaco's about perception. And the perception after this weekend is that Antonelli passed one of the hardest tests on the calendar, while Russell lost more ground. Now let's talk Ferrari, because Ferrari's weekend was painful, but also weirdly encouraging. Now, Lewis Hamilton finished in second, and for Hamilton in red, that felt important, because it's not just another podium, it's not just because Monaco's Monaco, but because Lewis Hamilton is starting to look more and more comfortable in that Ferrari. He had a pit lane speeding penalty, which seemed to be going around all over the circuit, but he still finished in second. He was there at the front, he was close enough to make the final restart feel dangerous, and every time Ferrari gives Hamilton a car he can trust, you can see old instincts are still there. And this is why Ferrari signed him. Not for nostalgia, not for posters, not for marketing photos. They signed him because of experience. And if there's a race where experience and calm matters, it's Monaco. And Hamilton gave Ferrari that experience and calm when it mattered. Now, was that enough to beat Antonelli? No. Mercedes still had the better package. Antonelli still controlled the race. Hamilton even said after the race that Ferrari still needs more downforce and still has a lot of work to do, which is actually pretty encouraging with a P2. But Ferrari can leave Monaco saying, okay, we are getting closer, and for Hamilton specifically, that's starting to feel less like a novelty and more like a real competitive project, because this guy keeps getting better. The red suit is no longer the story, the driving is becoming the story, and that's a good sign. But on the other side of the Ferrari garage, man, Charles Leclerc, this one hurts. It's always cruel when Leclerc has heartbreak in Monaco, because it's not just another race for him, this is his home. This is the race where he grew up. This is one where every single camera finds his face, his family, his balcony, his history, because this is his home. And for a while, he was right there in podium contention. And then the race just fell apart. Late safety car, restart, track surface issues, brake complaints. And then Leclerc goes straight on at Anthony Nogg's corner and straight into the barriers. Race over. And he was furious afterwards. He talked about brake issues. He said the situation was not acceptable. He said he did not want to take blame. He did not want to make excuses, but it was also not his fault. The guy was really pissed. Because from the outside, that crash looked like the perfect Monaco nightmare. A driver at home, running near the podium, trying to survive a restart while the track itself becomes questionable, and the car just doesn't give him what he needs. And that's basically the Ferrari weekend in one image. Hamilton on the podium, Leclerc on the wall. Hope and heartbreak. Progress and pain. That's Ferrari. That's Monaco. And unfortunately for Charles Leclerc, that is another home race where the story becomes what could have been. Now, Red Bull may have had the strangest split weekend of anyone because Max Verstappen's race was basically over before it started. Almost literally. He had a nightmare launch, dropped away, and retired at the end of lap 1 with a car issue. And that's brutal because Red Bull actually looked like it had something this weekend. Max qualified on the front row with an amazing qualifying in Q3. There was reason to think he could actually be part of the fight and maybe even take Antonelli's spot up top. And then, nothing. Done. Race over right at the start. For Max, that has to be maddening because in a season where Red Bull has not been the dominant force, when you finally get a weekend where the car looks alive, you cannot afford to lose a race before turn 1. But on the other hand, Isack Hadjar gets onto the podium. Max drops off, Hadjar pushes his way up and gets onto the podium. And not just any podium, this is a Monaco podium. And that was not easy. Isack Hadjar had a rough start to the weekend. He had a big crash in practice. He had to rebuild his confidence. And then in the race, he dealt with drivability issues like a pro. He had to keep the car alive, and he did. He had to stay close enough to benefit from penalties ahead, which he did. Then after the race, podium was under investigation. And after all of that, he did it. He made it into third, first Red Bull podium. He podiumed last year, but that was for Racing Bulls. This one is his first Red Bull podium. That's a massive result. So Red Bull leaves Monaco with one car dead immediately and the other one on the podium. Now that's bizarre, but for Hadjar, it's a career moment. Now McLaren. So this was supposed to be a milestone weekend, their 1000th Grand Prix, historic team, big moment, Monaco, perfect place for a celebration. Instead, not really great. Oscar Piastri finished 4th, which is solid. He got some useful points. He kept the car alive. He stayed in the mix on a day where a lot of drivers did not. But Lando Norris retired again, second race in a row, and that's a problem. Norris reported a power issue, he got stuck, and then the car issue just ended his race. And when you're McLaren, when you're trying to fight at the front, when Mercedes are winning again and again, when Ferrari is starting to look stronger and stronger, when Red Bull is up there, you cannot keep having weekends like this. Piastri's 4th is good, but McLaren is not in good enough mode right now. They're trying to defend a championship. They're supposed to be fighting for wins, and right now, they're getting punched by reliability, execution, and pace gaps at the worst times. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't panic time yet for McLaren fans, but it is concern time because one bad race is one bad race. 2 rough races in a row is starting to become a pattern. And I believe this is 3-4 times now that McLaren has had legitimate constructor-related issues that have pulled their drivers out of the race this season. And we're only like 6 races into the season. Overall, honestly, the biggest theme of this Monaco Grand Prix might honestly be penalties. Like, this race was just penalty city. I don't know if the Formula One Association or the race stewards just wanted to make the race interesting, but they were just throwing penalties everywhere. Pit lane speeding penalty, grid position penalty, collision penalty, track limit penalty, post-race penalty, investigations, no further actions, more investigations, with actions. It felt like half the finishing order needed a legal review. Now, Pierre Gasly, who I think is the most underrated driver on the grid, is the obvious heartbreaker here outside of Cadillac. He drove the car straight into third, but 2 5-second penalties for pit lane speeding dropped him into 7th, and he didn't know about this until after the race. That's painful. Monaco podium is huge, especially for Alpine. It would have been absolutely massive. For Gasly personally, it would have been one of the results you remember for years. Instead, it becomes a missed opportunity. Hamilton had his pit lane speeding penalty too, but he survived and kept going. Piastri had a penalty. Russell's penalty situation ruined his race. Hülkenberg had a collision penalty. Stroll had some track limits problems, but I'm assuming that's his own fault because I don't think Lance Stroll is very good. And then Perez. Okay, well, we'll get to Perez. But the big picture is Monaco is not just about speed. It's about procedure. It's about precision. It's about where you place the car. It's about the pit lane speed. It's about what you do under red flags. It's about what the team tells you and what you execute. And this race was decided by tiny margins and tiny mistakes. That's exactly why Monaco is so cruel.
Hamilton trying to win his first Grand Prix for Ferrari. Antonelli trying to win in Monaco and make it 5 in a row.
It's not just penalties and fights at the front. The midfield story was pretty wild. Racing Bulls had an incredible day. Liam Lawson finished in 5th. Arvid Lindblad finished in 6th, which is a massive haul. Monaco gave Racing Bulls the kind of results that can change a midfield season and put them straight to the top. When a front runner messes up, when others get penalties, when attrition hits, you have to be there, and that's exactly what Racing Bulls did. Now, Alpine had mixed emotions, as I said, with Gasly losing the podium, but they still scored in 7th. Colapinto ended up outside of the points due to his own penalty, so they're definitely going to have to watch out for that. But Alpine gets something, but, it could have been better. Williams got points with Albon in 8th and Sainz retiring after the late chaos involving Hülkenberg and Colapinto, which is another example of Monaco turning a decent day into a mess in about 3 seconds. Haas got points with Ocon in 9th, which is honestly quietly useful. And then Aston Martin. Aston Martin finishes in 10th. Fernando Alonso finishes in 10th, 1 point. Aston Martin gets its first point of the season. And how does it happen? In an absolute heartbreak, it happened because Cadillac lost theirs. And that's the part that makes me sick as a Cadillac fan, ladies and gentlemen. And I hate to report this. Aston did not exactly look like a monster this weekend. They did not storm into some points on pure pace. They survived, they waited, and when those penalties hit, Fernando Alonso was close enough to push into P10. And look, credit to Alonso. This is what he does. He hangs around. He gets you to pay for your mistakes. But for us, for Cadillac fans, this one hurts.
Pretty sizable issue for Cadillac across a couple of sessions.
So, who are the winners of Monaco? Obviously, Kimi Antonelli. He wins Monaco, extends the championship lead, and looks to the future. Maybe present superstar in the championship. Hamilton's a winner. 2nd place for Ferrari. More comfort, more belief. Hadjar's a huge winner. Monaco podium. Kept after investigation. Massive career statement. Racing Bulls a winner. 5th and 6th is enormous. Alonso and Aston Martin are weirdly winners, not because they were brilliant, but because they were just there. And the losers, first, Russell had another weekend that he just couldn't catch a break, but there's still plenty of time left on this calendar, and I believe in George Russell. I still have George Russell as a championship favorite. You heard it here first. Leclerc had a heartbreaking one, car failing, or whatever happened to put him in the barrier. In Monaco is always going to hurt for a guy like Leclerc. Norris and McLaren had another painful weekend, though McLaren was able to salvage with a few points from Oscar Piastri. Gasly got absolutely crushed by the penalties. Verstappen lost a potentially big result before the race even started. But none of these losses, in my opinion, compared to the biggest loser of this weekend. Unfortunately, the biggest loser this weekend is our team Cadillac. We're not losers this weekend because we performed below expectations. Actually, it's kind of the opposite. This is what makes it so painful. Cadillac almost scored a point in Monaco. Sergio Perez crossed the line in 10th, and for a few minutes, Cadillac had done it. For a few minutes, our team had made history. First reward for the project, first real tangible result for all the work, all the struggle, all the long nights, and then the penalty came. 10 seconds, Perez drops to 15th, and the point went to Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin, which sucks. There's no cute way to address this sucks, ladies and gentlemen. This sucks. Because Aston Martin is not just any team in this context. Aston has been the reference point. They have been the team that Cadillac has been hovering around, fighting with, and measuring itself against. So losing your first point is bad, but losing it to Aston Martin, that's like the football hitting you in the face after you've already tripped. And this is where we have to be honest. Checo did drive a race that put Cadillac in position, which matters. He was there. He survived Monaco. He put the car into the points conversation. He crossed the line in 10th. The pace and racecraft were good enough to make something happen on a chaotic day. That's the positive end. But the mistakes were real. He had a drive-through penalty that he really did get for earlier in the race for lining up in the wrong grid slot at the original start. And after the red flag restart, he was out of position in the starting box again. The stewards looked at the evidence and the penalty was applied. That's not bad luck. That's execution. And this episode has a theme. It's that Monaco is an execution race. You can be fast and still lose. You can survive and still lose. You can cross the line in the points and still lose. Because if the details are wrong, Monaco will take everything from you. And for Cadillac, that's kind of exactly what happened. The car did enough. The driver did enough to get into position. But the execution was not clean enough to keep the point. That's the lesson here. And then there's Bottas. Valtteri Bottas retired after 15 laps, so Cadillac did not get 2 clean cars through the race either. That matters because for a new team, every lap of data is necessary. Every finish matters. Every full race distance helps. So this is not just, Checo lost a point. It was a weekend where one car retired and the other car almost made history, but lost it on penalties and poor execution. And that's why I'm calling Cadillac the biggest race loser of the weekend. Not because they were hopeless, but because they were close. And that's such a different feeling from Australia or China, and even earlier races where the goal was just survive, qualify, finish, learn. Like Monaco gave us a taste of Cadillac actually competing, and for one moment, you could see it. The Mach 26 in the points. Checo did Checo street track things, Cadillac was on the board, and then it disappeared. But I want to be clear, there is progress in this pain. If Cadillac were just dead last with no chance, this would not hurt. We would shrug it off and keep moving on. It hurts because this team is getting close. It hurts because the point was real enough to lose. So what do we do with this? We do not panic. We do not pretend it does not matter. We do not say, oh, fine, we're a new team. No, it matters. That point matters. It was history. It was pride. It was a constructor's championship point. And going to Aston Martin is the opposite of what you want that point to do. So yeah, be mad. I mean, I'm mad, but also understand what this means. Cadillac is not just trying to avoid embarrassment. They're close enough to make mistakes that matter. I think we may be in a new phase here. Cadillac is entering points conversation. And as painful as this weekend was, I think it's a really good sign Checo almost did it. The team almost did it. Expectations are rising. And the next time Cadillac gets that close to a point, they'll have to be cleaner. No wrong grid slot, no restart positioning mistake, no giving Aston Martin a free gift. Because now we know the first point is not some fantasy. It's out there. It was right there in Monaco, and we let it slip. So the hunt is real now. That point is coming, and it's coming soon. But Formula One is not just going to hand it to us. Cadillac has to be clean. We have to treat every race from now on like we can score, because we absolutely can. And that's a great segue into our next topic. This is one of those weeks where we don't have a break between races. We are going straight on to Barcelona. So let's discuss the Barcelona Grand Prix.
And the Spanish Grand Prix is underway. We're racing to turn number 1. Piastri is gone.
All right, so after Monaco, Formula One does not get a break. And honestly, I love that because Monaco is pretty weird. Though it's special, historic, and glamorous, it's basically chaos in a tuxedo. But Monaco is not always the best measuring stick for who really has the best car. Monaco's walls, track position, qualifying, pit lane penalties, praying that your car practically fits in someone's living room at 150 miles an hour. Now here we come to Barcelona. Barcelona is different. Barcelona is the exam. The circuit, the Barcelona Catalunya, is where Formula One goes when you want to find out what a car really is. It has high-speed corners, it has medium-speed corners, it has low-speed corners, it has traction zones, it has a long main straight, it tests aero, it tests balance, it tests tire wear, it tests whether your car is actually good or whether it just had a cute weekend because the track covered up your problems. So after Monaco, where much of the result was about survival and execution, Barcelona is a perfect follow-up. Because now the question becomes, okay, what do these teams actually have? Who has real pace? Who has real upgrades? Who's improving? And who just got lucky in the chaos? It's round 7 of the season, and it feels like a checkpoint. Not the end of the story, not even close. But a checkpoint, because Barcelona is familiar. Teams know this place. Drivers know this place. Engineers have known this place for years, and for years they've known that it's a classic testing track because it tells you a lot about your car. It'll test your car's balance, it'll test your car's tire, your management of them. It'll test if your car is good only in a straight and struggles with downforce. And because it's race 7, it tests if your upgrades are real. And that's why I think this weekend matters so much, because Miami brought a lot of upgrades, but Miami was a sprint weekend and a very specific kind of circuit. Canada brought more data, but Canada was also its own thing. Monaco was Monaco. Now we get to Barcelona, a permanent racetrack, 3 full practice sessions, and a full layout that actually asks the car multiple questions. So this is where the pecking order is going to start to become clear, and that's what makes it one of the more important races of the season. It's not hype or glamour, it tells us the truth. And the biggest story heading into Barcelona is still Mercedes, specifically Kimi Antonelli. This kid is on a 5-race winning streak. 5 in a row. And again, every week I say it, and every week it still sounds insane. Kimi Antonelli is 19 years old in a Mercedes, and he is not just winning races. He's starting to make the championship feel like it is bending around him. Monaco was a huge test for him. The pole, the pressure, the restarts, Hamilton right next to him, chaos behind him, and he passed. Now Barcelona is a different kind of test. This is not just, can you survive the walls? This is, can you keep dominating on a normal circuit in a normal race weekend when everyone has practice time, everyone has data, and everyone has a chance to tune in the car? And that's what makes this interesting, because if Antonelli wins again in Barcelona, then we're not just talking about a hot streak anymore. We're talking about something that starts feeling historic. And for Mercedes, the question is no longer, do they have a championship car? They clearly do. Question is, how long before the entire championship conversation becomes Antonelli versus everyone else? And that brings us to George Russell, because George is still my guy in this championship fight. I'm not giving up on George Russell. I'm not doing it. Barcelona is a big weekend for him. It just is. The gap is getting bigger. The missed opportunities are stacking. Canada hurt. Monaco hurt. And when the pace is there, the points have not been there the way they need to be. And in Formula One, that absolutely matters. You can have all the explanations in the world. You can say reliability, strategy, bad luck. You can say the team situation did not go your way. And some of that may be completely true, but the standings don't care about your pain. The standings just count. So for Russell, Barcelona is not a must-win in the mathematical sense. But it does feel like the kind of must-win scenario where it's like a must-respond weekend. He needs to beat Antonelli. Or at the very least, he needs to pull together a clean, strong weekend that reminds people that this is still a fight. Because if Antonelli wins again and George is behind him again, the story gets louder. And the story becomes brutal. Like, is Mercedes already Kimi's team? That's why Barcelona is so important for George Russell. Not because the title ends here, but because narrative can get away from you before the math does. So Ferrari comes into Barcelona in a really interesting place. On the one side, Lewis Hamilton is building momentum. Back-to-back second places, more comfort in the car, more consistency, more confidence, and the feeling that the first Ferrari win is getting closer. That matters, because for the first part of Hamilton's Ferrari story, the headline was basically, wow, Lewis Hamilton is in red. That looks strange. Now the headline is starting to become, Lewis Hamilton might actually end up winning in red. It's a very different conversation. And Barcelona is a good test of that. Because if Ferrari is strong here, then the optimism becomes far more serious than just Monaco was good for them because their engine isn't strong and you don't need to be in Monaco. Barcelona is a lot less forgiving. So if Hamilton is near the front in Barcelona, Ferrari's looking good, and they can fight in Barcelona against Mercedes, then we have to start talking about a real threat that I believe Ferrari is. And then there's Charles. Monaco was a heartbreak. Charles Leclerc, home race, podium chance, crash right at the end. So Barcelona is kind of a reset. Leclerc needs a clean weekend. Ferrari needs both cars scoring big, and if Hamilton is now second in the championship, Leclerc needs to make sure this does not become another garage where the emotional center starts drifting away from him. Ferrari has hope. Barcelona tells us how real that hope really is. Now McLaren. McLaren needs a response. There's no other way to say it. Piastri got fourth in Monaco, which was a decent salvage job, but Lando Norris retiring again is a problem. Reliability, execution, pace, whatever combination you want to use. McLaren is not looking as clean as it needs to look. And this is a team that should be fighting at the front. They're not supposed to be in the just get through the weekend mode. Barcelona is a place where McLaren can either calm people down or make the concerns louder. If the car is quick over a full lap, if the tire life is there, if both drivers have a clean weekend, then okay, maybe Monaco was just more pain in a weird stretch. But if McLaren still struggles again, then the conversation changes. Then we start asking ourselves if they're falling behind in the overall development race, which is really bad. Red Bull is also fascinating. Max Verstappen's Monaco race was over almost immediately, and that was brutal because Red Bull actually had signs of life. He qualified in the front row, and Hadjar made it onto the podium, so there's some signs of life in that car. Barcelona becomes a real test of whether Red Bull's recent progress is real. Cars really improved, Barcelona will be able to show that. And if Max is anywhere near the fight, nobody is comfortable. In the midfield, you've got what might be the most chaotic part of the weekend. Racing Bulls are coming off a huge Monaco result. Lawson in 5th, Lindblad in 6th. That was a great performance by them both in Monaco. Huge points. Now the question is whether that was Monaco chaos or whether Racing Bulls are genuinely moving forward. Alpine had pain in Monaco because Gasly lost that podium. That was a heartbreaker, but they still have pace flashes and they still look good. So they need to turn good weekends into clean results here. Same with Williams. And Aston Martin, well, they finally scored their first point of the season with Alonso. And of course, that 1 point had to come at the expense of our team Cadillac. I'm still very upset about that, to be honest. Fernando Alonso at home is always a story. Spanish crowd will be there. Same thing for Carlos Sainz. They're both going to have great races because that's why Spanish crowd, or at least I think they will. Haas and Audi, same zone, where one good qualifying, one clean race, one weird strategy can give them a great weekend. That Haas still hasn't gotten their first podium. I do believe they'll get it this season. Not sure when, but it'll be this season. Overall, Barcelona is less forgiving to teams that are not only surviving. You need pace, you need time management, you need a car that works over a proper lap. So the midfield fight this weekend may tell us a lot more than Monaco did. Monaco told us who survived. Barcelona might tell us who's actually improving. And that brings us to our team Cadillac.
Do you know, shout out to Cadillac. It's exciting to see.
For our team, Barcelona matters in a very different way than Monaco. Monaco hurt because Cadillac almost scored. Checo crossed the line in 10th, point was right there, then the penalty came and the point went to Aston Martin. That was painful. But Barcelona is not about almost stealing a point through Monaco chaos. Barcelona is about actually measuring the Mac 26, our car, the Mario Andretti Cadillac 26, on a real circuit. This is where we get a better read on the car. This is a weekend where we get the data we need to improve. How does it handle high-speed corners? How does it treat the tires? How does it compare to Aston Martin, Haas, Audi, Williams, Racing Bulls, all of whom we want to compete with and we are not competing with as of now? This weekend is not necessarily about expecting points. I want points. Obviously, I want points. We all want points. But the realistic goal is cleaner execution and real race pace information. No silly mistakes, no lost opportunities, no operational mess. Give Checo and Bottas clean practice sessions, let the engineers learn, let the car run. Let's see where the Mach 26 really stands after the progress we've seen. Because if Cadillac looks respectable in Barcelona, that's a bigger statement than looking okay in Monaco. Monaco can be weird. Barcelona tells the truth. And if the truth is that Cadillac is still getting closer, then I can live with that. And finally, since it's been a little while, we have to talk about our boy, Colton Herta.
Colton Herta has taken the lead. Let's go, boys.
This is not just a huge weekend for Colton Herta. This is not just a nice weekend. It's not just a cute little American driver story. It's huge. This weekend is huge for Colton Herta. Colton is scheduled to drive the Cadillac in FP1 at Barcelona. This is his first official Formula One weekend session with the team. He is going to drive the Mario Andretti Cadillac in first practice one. Whether he'll be in Checo's car or VB's car, I'm not sure. We'll find out closer to the race. But Colton's driving the Cadillac in first practice. Rookies get this opportunity a few times throughout the year. I believe each team is required to give rookies 4 of their free practice one sessions. This allows for development of drivers, and Colton's getting his chance. It's not a private test. It's not a simulator run. It's not a PR photo. It's a real Grand Prix weekend with real teams, real timing screens, real engineers, real pressure, and a real Cadillac F1 car underneath him. Colton's job is to show the team that he can handle the environment, show that he can jump into the car, do the procedures, manage the pressure, and contribute to the weekend for Checo, Bottas, and Cadillac. And what makes it even bigger is that this is also an F2 weekend for Colton. So he's not just flying in, doing FP1 and going home. He's got FP1 in the Cadillac, then he's got F2 practice, F2 qualifying, F2 sprint, F2 feature race. It's a monster workload. It's a lot of track time. It's a lot of mental energy. That is a lot of switching gears, literally and emotionally, between F2 program and the Cadillac F1 program. And honestly, that is why the weekend is so important. Because if Colton wants to be part of Cadillac's future, this is the kind of weekend where the team learns a lot about him. It's not just pure speed. Everyone knows Colton can drive. He's a 9-time IndyCar winner. He'll not suddenly forget how to drive. But Formula One is about more than talent. It's about adapting, preparing, working with engineers, feedback, staying calm. And Barcelona gives Cadillac a chance to see that up close. So my message on Colton is simple. Do not judge the whole future off one FP1 session. Don't panic at the timing screen. It's not the assignment. The assignment is progress. Clean laps, good feedback, professional execution, and if you can combine that with a strong F2 weekend or even just a smart, composed F2 weekend in the points, then Barcelona becomes a real step forward for our boy. For Colton, this might be the most important weekend of his season so far. For Cadillac fans, it's just another reason for us to watch every single session. I can't wait for FP1 to see my boy with the American flag next to his name in the Cadillac. It's about Cadillac building for tomorrow. Barcelona is the true test for the grid. It's the true test for Cadillac, and it's a true test for Colton Herta. So yes, after the pain in Monaco, bring on Barcelona. Let's see what the car really is. Let's see how Cadillac responds, and let's see our boy Colton Herta in that Cadillac for FP1. That's a big deal. This is an American F1 development happening right in front of us, and you better believe we are watching. And there you have it, folks. That is your Monaco Grand Prix review and your Barcelona Grand Prix preview. Join us next week where we will go over all the events that occurred at the Barcelona Grand Prix weekend, including your team Cadillac. See you then.